Hi everyone, welcome back to Women's Health Unwrapped. Today you have just me and it's a very personal episode. It's about how I finally stopped dieting after years of being stuck in the cycle. Now, this episode isn't about why diets don't work. I've covered that before. I can link to that episode in the show notes. I did a whole episode on why you should never go on a diet ever again. This is about what actually helped me to break free and create a better relationship with food and, very importantly, a part of this, my body. So I'm going to be sharing 3 key lessons that helped me to shift my mindset, stop obsessing over the scale and start making choices that truly support my health and happiness. Now, if you've ever felt trapped in the cycle of dieting, I know that this episode is going to help you to find a way out too. So let's get into it. Now, my never-ending cycle with dieting sadly probably started at school when I was around 14. Now, this is going to be around 1990-ish. Back then, there was no social media, no World Wide Web, but it was hard enough being a girl and seeing celebrities in the media everywhere and believing that you needed to go on a diet because you had to look the same way that all of those celebrities, this was the era of the waif like models, the heroin chic sort of time. So back then at school, 14, I didn't really understand what a diet was, but I heard other girls talk about it and I thought it was what you did if you wanted to be accepted. And I think when I say that, this wasn't about just acceptance from a size and the way you looked point of view, but this was acceptance because you just wanted to fit in and do the same as everyone else. A bit like, I guess, today's kids probably have similar things, like if they're not on TikTok, then they're not cool. So they want to be on TikTok just to fit in, even though they're maybe not that bothered about sitting at home and, scrolling on TikTok. So for me, I just wanted to be normal. I wasn't overweight at all. I was totally normal from a weight perspective. Obviously, at the time, I didn't quite realize that. So dieting became a habit. It was something I was always either starting or failing at, and then promising myself I'd start again. It was all about chasing the number on the scale, believing that once I got there, I'd finally feel confident, happy, and worthy. But as you probably know, that's not how it works. Monday would roll round and I'd be back on the diet by, I'd say maybe even Thursday, because I used to go to Weight Watchers on a Thursday to get weighed after a tough week at work. I'd tell myself that I deserved a treat. I'd been on the scales, I'd lost a pound. Now it was time to go out for food or get a takeaway or have a big bar of chocolate. And so the cycle would start again because I would indulge over the weekend, that long 3-day weekend. Even when I had Lotus and she went back to school, I used to work 4 days a week. And so for me, my weekend started on a Thursday night. So that was 3 days back then of eating whatever I wanted because it was a weekend and that's what you did at a weekend. So then by Monday, I would be wanting to start again and maybe put it off a couple of weeks and feel even worse and be pushing myself to start the cycle again. It was exhausting. And even worse, it made me feel like I was constantly failing. So, how did I stop? Well, of course, it wasn't overnight. It was a slow shift built on key realizations that changed how I saw myself, my health, and my relationship with food. Now, I'm talking at this point only a few years ago. So, given that my dieting started at 14 and I'm now almost 49 in a few weeks' time, I spent the best part of 30 years believing that a diet was going to be my answer to feeling the way that I wanted to feel. So this, of course, wasn't overnight. This is something that came about because of starting the Body Coach program back in, I think it was maybe 2017. I started using his stuff 2016, paid for the program to do it properly at the beginning of 2017. And I got much more than what I thought I was buying into. I thought I was buying a diet. And that was the beginning of shifting. But it was a few years later when I really did that extra bit of work to finally stop dieting. And that's what I want for you. So I'm going to share those 3 learnings that you can take on board, because I really believe that many women, and probably most of those stuck in that dieting culture and cycle, are doing so because of these 3 problems. So the first one is around your worth is not tied to your weight. The first big change for me was realizing that my self-worth, the value of me as a human, had nothing to do with my weight. For years, I'd told myself that if I lost weight, I'd finally feel good enough. But no matter how much weight I lost, I always found something else to fix. That confidence didn't miraculously arise because I'd lost weight. I didn't suddenly feel worthy and enough and normal because I had lost weight. I had to shift my mindset and know that my worth is not dictated by the number on the scale. Yes, as a health coach, I understand that weight can impact health, but losing weight just for the sake of feeling worthy is a losing game. Instead, I started to focus on what actually made me feel good. Things like energy, strength, and confidence. And that came from within, not from shrinking my body. And that was a big shift I had through those body coach programs that I did, was realizing that actually the way that I feel when I'm in control and building these different habits of working out in a different way and strength training and building not just physical strength, but mental strength, that's when I started to realize that actually maybe I could feel different. I could feel, back then I didn't use this term worth. I didn't realize this is what was going on, but that I could feel enough, that I could actually perhaps feel better than I'd felt anyway. So I want you to ask yourself, what is it you're really chasing when you diet? Is it confidence, happiness, acceptance? What if you could start working on those things right now without waiting for a number on the scale to give you permission? Now, I'm a big fan of Zoe Science and Nutrition. I love their podcast. And some of the research from them shows that, weight alone is not the best predictor of health. I am going to talk a little bit about weight and what matters with our weight. But that alone isn't just the best predictor of health. There are factors like gut health, metabolic function, which is a huge thing we need to consider as menopausal women, nutrient quality. They all play a far bigger role in long-term well-being than simply hitting a certain number of calories, number on the scale, and achieving BMI. That's a whole other episode. Maybe we should do one on why BMI is something we shouldn't necessarily be using on its own anyway as an indicator. So that's my first learning and tip, that your worth is not tied to your weight. Okay. The second one is that food is more than just a tool for weight loss. And this is a game changer, because for so long I saw food as the enemy, something to control, something that controlled me, something that determined whether I was being good or bad or naughty. But food is more than just a way to manage weight. It's fuel, nourishment. And I don't just mean nourishment to satisfy hunger, but it nourishes your soul as well, doesn't it? Most importantly, it's a way to support your mental and your physical health. So I realised that food isn't about deprivation. It's about investing in my future self. Now, I want to eat in a way that makes me feel good. And back then I had this realisation that, when I really changed the way I ate, although at that point it was still on a diet, so to speak. And if you're listening, I'm using the fingers for inverted commas for that. I thought, you know, okay, I'm dieting to lose weight. But then I started to learn that the shifts I'd made in what I was eating on this diet actually really made me feel more energized and vibrant. And I felt strong mentally. I wasn't perfect at that point. I was still really struggling with my anxiety, if you've heard me talk about that before. But I was in definitely a better place. But the thing that I actually realized that kind of put the cherry on the cake, no pun intended, was that this was protecting my long-term health. And that was what I really had a penny drop moment about. So I stopped focusing on restriction and I started focusing on inclusion. Like, what can I add into my diet to feel my best? How can I get more of those, healthy, fibrous plants and variety? What can I do to bring more of that stuff that actually makes me feel good inside and out without considering the number on the scales or the size of clothes that I wear? That mindset shift changed everything. Instead of thinking just about what I shouldn't eat, I started thinking about what could I give my body to thrive. And in the past 3 and a bit years since I came into this space and started my business, this has really accelerated and is what I base my values around when I support clients with their nutrition. Now, Professor Tim Spector, who is one of the founders of Zoe, his research shows that focusing on gut health by eating a variety of plant-based foods, fiber, and healthy fats leads to improved digestion, mood, and energy levels. And some recent research from Zoe, in one of their huge big data studies, shows some brilliant evidence around the connection between mental health and what we eat. The quality of what you eat matters far more than the calorie count. So my lesson number 3 is on emotion, breaking that emotional connection to food. And I had a lot of emotions. And actually, I was hesitating as I said that. I had a lot of emotions because this is probably the area that the one out of the 3 I'm sharing that I am still work in progress with. I get it and I've worked on it and I've made lots of positive shifts, but it's the one piece that is something I am still consciously trying to make more shifts of. So this last big shift in those 3 learnings a few years ago was, trying to understand better that emotional connection I have to food. I've always used food to comfort, as a reward, as a coping mechanism for stress, to soothe. Some people have an emotional attachment in one of those ways. Some people can't eat and don't eat when they're stressed or if they're upset. I can eat with any emotion and I use that emotion to drive the type of food that I eat. It's filling a void. And that was a big thing that I learned by digging into my inner belief system and reframing some of those limiting beliefs that I had. And the truth is, when I was dieting, like that never addressed any of that. Dieting was always a transaction. It was, this is what I have to eat to hit that number on the scales. That is the process. So although I might have been able to stick to diets sometimes for months or well, I'm saying obviously not 100%, but being on a certain diet like a Weight Watchers or Slimming World type thing for quite a while, they weren't addressing what was going on underneath. I was adhering and restricting and following something without actually understanding me and my beliefs and so on. They just focused on the surface, on what to eat, when to eat, but never why I was eating the way that I did. And once I started recognizing my patterns, I worked on new ways to deal with those emotions. I used things like journaling, talking about it. I did do some coaching myself with someone else on this. Movement was huge for me. When I move, I can deal with my emotions differently. And also just the fact in itself that you've become aware of that emotional attachment of food, you can pick up on that and catch yourself when you are perhaps choosing something because of an emotion, that emotional trigger. So even that in itself just allowed me to sit with those feelings instead of automatically choosing the food and then numbing the feelings with that food that I was putting into my mouth and body. And here's the thing, like, food is meant to be enjoyed. We live in a culture where food and socializing over food is really important. It's a big part of how we come together as a family, as friendship groups, as work groups, and so on. And it's okay to celebrate with food, to find comfort in a warm meal. On Sunday, when the weather was awful here, we had a lovely homemade meal of mince and dumplings and veg. And I think I'd counted up, I put it on my Instagram stories, that there were like 9 plants in that meal and it was homemade. So I knew there were no ultra processed foods in it, and I wanted that kind of food because it was so cold and dreary and dark outside. And that's okay, but everything is about balance and having awareness, and self-awareness comes up so much on my podcast episodes. So many of the guests call it out when they give their wrap-up 3 tips. So it is about being aware of what your relationship is with food or certain foods and how your emotions come into that, rather than having that guilt and shame and regret. Now, again, according to Zoe's research, our eating habits are influenced by psychology as much as nutrition. So be mindful of those emotional triggers, learn to eat in tune with your body's hunger signals, and that way you can really dramatically improve your relationship with food. So they're my 3 learnings. I'm going to wrap them up at the end for you to summarize. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge something important, because I don't want the message to be misunderstood. While I talk a lot about breaking free from dieting and shifting focus away from the scale and how much you weigh and how you look, that doesn't mean weight doesn't matter at all. Obesity is a well-documented risk factor for many chronic health conditions, including type 2 diabetes, which we know is massively on the rise, especially for women. Heart disease, again, very high amongst women, biggest killer of women globally, and certain cancers. So we know that excess weight, particularly when combined with poor metabolic health, that's our overall, this is not just metabolism, it's how our whole body is connected together to basically drive our metabolism. So we call that metabolic health. When we have excess weight, that can negatively impact longevity and quality of life. And I've seen that firsthand in my own family as well. However, weight should never be the only focus when it comes to health. It's about how you nourish your body, move your body, and care for yourself. Sustainable weight management is about it's not about extreme restriction. It's about finding a way of eating and living that supports long-term well-being. And my message to you is that we have to step away from believing that by dieting, we will become that version of ourselves who will feel fulfilled and happy and confident, or whatever it is you're seeking. We as women need to break free from that toxic diet culture. And there's some great people who talk specifically about this on social media. We need to understand what food is doing to us and recognize, the research now that is around on ultra processed foods from lots of brilliant people that you can read. Chris Van Tolleken's written a brilliant book on this, and Tim Spector obviously talks about this as well. And in the menopause world, we're really seeing a more knowledge coming out around this, and it's certainly part of something that I use in my programs, coaching, and work with clients, because we need to really understand the role of our gut. And it doesn't matter how many calories we're putting in if we stick to a low calorie amount, but we're not giving our gut the right diversity and helping our metabolic system to function properly, then it doesn't matter how much you weigh, you won't be healthy. And if you aren't feeling healthy, then you aren't going to be as happy and vibrant as you want to be. So this is why focusing on overall nutrition and lifestyle habits is far more beneficial than fixating on a number on the scale. So instead of chasing weight loss as an outcome, shift that goal to improving health from the inside out, and know that in shifting that, you are going to build strong physical, mental, and emotional health. When you fuel yourself with nourishing foods and then you move in ways you enjoy, and obviously I'm a big advocate of movement, and you're managing stress effectively, your body naturally finds its healthiest weight over time. And there's lots of science on this as well, about how we have that base weight. And when we are dieting a lot, we can really adjust that and affect our metabolic health in a negative way. So to wrap up, if you're stuck in the dieting cycle, I want you to know that you're breaking free as possible. It took me a long time, and I don't want you to spend more time than perhaps what you have already in your life, especially as an adult, being stuck in this diet cycle. For me, it came down to these 3 shifts. Number 1, understanding that my worth isn't tied to my weight. Realizing that food is about nourishment and not just restriction. That second one was really powerful, and actually not just for food. That drives so much of how I choose to be healthy today, because I want to know that I am nourishing my body to be strong and healthy and live a long life. And then the final one was addressing that emotional connection I had with food. It took time, and like I say, I'm still learning and moving forward with my journey and relationship with all of this. But I can confidently say 100% I'll never go on a diet again. Okay. Instead, I focus on building a way of eating that supports me for life. And as a real example, I want to share with you that at the start of this year or end of last year, I felt like I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. But I didn't go about it by going on a diet. I just ramped up my habits I already had and shifted some of the ones that had trickled in through November, December when we were on holiday and in the run up to Christmas and so on, and just really knuckled back down to those core habits of who I am. And that is nourishing my body with healthy protein and great fats and those good nature's carbs through vegetables and fruit, and loads of fiber and plant diversity and nuts, seeds, herbs, spices. I've tried new vegetables. I've tried fennel for the first time. I've used that in a couple of different recipes. And what was one of the other ones? Oh, celeriac was another one. I've been trying to take some advice that I got from one of my podcast guests last year, Christy, to get a bit more adventurous and challenge myself to buy new fruit and veg. So, I will never go on a diet again. And I curl up inside when I'm out with other women who start talking about going on a diet, because it's always such a big part of conversation. And it disappoints me and it saddens me that these women are in their 40s, 50s, sometimes even older, and they're still talking and obsessing, in many cases, about dieting. So if you're listening to this and feeling like you're stuck, start small. That's always my advice. If you are a regular listener or follower of me on social media, then you know that it's all about starting today, choosing one habit you want to make. Maybe that's improving what you eat for breakfast, or maybe it's reducing snacking, and start really small to change that habit and make it a positive, healthy one that you want. That might be even in how you talk to yourself about your body. That's a big one. The way you think about food, how you talk about food, what words are you using, like treat or naughty, or sins, those things many of us have had brainwashed into us through diet clubs. Or if it's identifying those emotional triggers, recognizing that, I want you to just think about what can you focus on first, and then some small steps to begin shifting that, because I don't want you to spend any longer than you may have done already stuck in a diet cycle. So thank you so much for taking the time today, listening or watching, choosing Women's Health Unwrapped. I'm here to help you know the value of your health, to unwrap what it means to be healthy, and to help you in midlife as you navigate all things perimenopause and menopause, to feel healthy, happy and strong by building those habits with the advice I share in the episodes, the inspiration that I give you, and taking it small steps every day consistently, because that's where you get the benefit. So I'd love to hear from you. If this topic and episode today has resonated with you, send me a message. I'm on Instagram, Life Now Coaching, or you can find me on LinkedIn as Nicola Farndell. I'm sure you know how to get in touch with me. And if you're looking for support to ditch dieting and improve not just the food that you eat, but your health in ways you have no idea will come about, then reach out and connect. And finally, one small ask, please, if you're on Apple, subscribe to the podcast so you get notified each week when a new episode lands. You don't get charged or anything like that. You just follow the episode. So click those three dots in the top right to follow. And if you haven't done already, I'd love you to give us a rating. You know, if you think we're 5 stars, leave 5 stars or whatever you think we're worthy of, because it's those ratings and reviews and follows that really help the podcast to get into the ears of other women and help them to build an incredible, vibrant, thriving life through midlife, menopause and beyond. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's episode.